Church Unitarian Universalist, where, as you can see, we have moved locations, but we haven't moved our center of doing justice, being together in joy and love and faith. It is so good to virtually see many of you online, and I hope throughout our service you're able to talk with each other and we're able to continue to connect. So to tell you a little bit about Community Church Unitarian Universalist, we are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual quest for truth and meaning. Ours is faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. It is a joy to be with you today. And in these times of physical distancing, I just want to let our community know that we continue to try to connect in as many ways as we can. So we've been doing our wonderful sermon seminars during the week using Zoom. We've been meeting using online apparatus like Zoom and other things. We've been having our Facebook Live worship, as well as if you are on our email list, we have been sending our worship out early in the week. And then later in the week, our Community Matters newsletter has been a way for us to not only keep in touch, but a way for us to find resources in New Orleans, as well as beyond, and also interesting things to do online. So we'll have everything from ways in which we can support sewing, surgical masks for folks in the healthcare industry that really need it at the moment, to something as silly as marble racing, because you know what? We need a little bit of that as well in this time. And so we welcome you to our Community Church Unitarian Universalist service. We miss you. We hope that you are continuing to stay connected. And as we do this, we are continuing to grow and evolve and remain flexible. So just please know, too, that members of our church and those beyond should be receiving calls from our Community Church UU buddies to keep us connected. And please continue to post on Facebook and continue to reach out to each other in this time. With that, let us begin.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near.
So as we do each week in our Unitarian Universalist service, and here he's queued up. Sebastian, you want to come forward to light our chalice? So as we do each week at Community Church Unitarian Universalist, we light our chalice and we ask one of our younger members to join us in our chalice lighting. So Sebastian Roque Van Young, we miss, by the way, so many of our CCUU youth. We hope you're here and watching. Just know that we miss you, and I look forward to a time when you also will be able to light the chalice. Also, please stay after the service, where our wonderful RE director, Cynthia Ramirez, will be doing an extended Words for All Ages, as well as a craft for the week. And with that, as my worship associate Adrian, who is coming back right now, plays our chalice lighting, please sing along as you know the words. Slightly different one, but I like the spirit.
We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge and the warmth of love and community and the fire of hope and commitment.
And now let us keep singing or have Bennett. Thank you to our wonderful music director, Bennett, who has recorded this music for us. Hymn 183, Hymn 183, The Wind of Change Forever Blown. All right, all. Now, I think, especially in this time, is a very sacred part of our service, which is our time to share our joys and our sorrows. This is all that has happened this week, this month that I've been talking about. It's only been a month since a lot of this has been going on to our knowledge. And so it's a really important time that we be able to share with each other our joys and our sorrows. I have our candles here that I can light. And this week, we're also going to be playing a song so that you all have time to be able to, in our Facebook feed, list your joys and your sorrows that you feel comfortable sharing with this community and sometimes beyond. So we will be playing another piece by Bennett at this time, a piano piece. And in this time, please feel free to list your joys and sorrows, and I will read them aloud and light candles. Again, I look forward to a time when we're together to share these in person. And I feel honored that we still have this sacred time as a church to share our joys and our sorrows. So now Bennett will be playing a piece, and please list your joys and sorrows, and I will say them after the piece is played. So I am going to say aloud some of the joys and sorrows that have been shared. Thank you to Alicia Cook for lifting this up. This is sorrowful indeed. This is thoughts for the family and loved ones of Reverend William Barnwell, a committed social justice warrior who died in New Orleans this Friday of COVID-19. Stacy Seatfeld writes, "It is joyful to be with you all this morning, sending love from Stacy, John, Eli, and Liam." It is so good to virtually see you, Stacy, and I'm so glad we are together in community. Sabrina Pimley writes, "As a healthcare worker, I'm thankful for the ability and opportunity to work." Sabrina, our thoughts are with you. And please know we are grateful to all that you are doing as well. At this time, I'm going to light 2 more candles. I'm going to light a candle, a virtual candle, for all the joys that are unexpressed. Because of course, even in this time, there are so many joys. The joys of being with family, even in sometimes a cramped home, the joys of our health, the joys of nature walks, so many joys that are unexpected in this time. But of course, there are also the deep sorrows. The deaths of loved ones and members of our community, particularly in New Orleans, the anxiety, the fear, these are sorrows that we carry as well. I am also want to make sure that we still get to see everyone. So I also want to note that Sean writes that I'm grateful for the federal legislature passing the relief package to help folks who have lost their jobs. Yes. With all of that, let us take 1 minute of silence. You may remain seated, but let's be honest, probably many of you are seated or reclining, which is exactly as you should be, for hymn 332, Perfect Singer, Songs of Earth. Our first reading today is from Victor Laval, from his brilliant novel, Big Machine. One story that people like to retell a lot is the story of Jesus Christ. I can understand why, but the retellings never have much impact on me. A guy is born divine and grows up to be diviner. I might admire him, but how can I really aspire to that? The story that actually moves me as a grown man is the story of Joseph and Mary. And it's because for all the talk of them being holy and righteous, they were just human beings. No matter how many dreams and visitations, they were still just folks at first. They didn't know if they were right. They could only hope. I can try and aspire to that. So, as we do each week, this is our time for our offering. Now more than ever, we so appreciate your support. We appreciate all the ways that you are reaching out to each other as a community, calling and writing cards, checking in on each other. That is what we do with our time. We appreciate all that we're doing outside our four walls, quite literally outside our four walls in worship, but also in donations to the food bank, in sewing, in helping support our healthcare workers right now who are on the front line, in simply being there for each other when we cannot physically be there for each other. And of course, too, we deeply appreciate your continued financial support so we can continue doing the work of our Unitarian Universalist faith, whether in our building or not, whether in person or not. This is the work of our faith that we are doing each and every day. It is not bound by a place. And so, at this time, we ask that you give to Community Church Unitarian Universalist, which is a self-sustaining congregation. So you can give by text at 504-379-2659. That's where you text give to be prompted to make your donation. You can go online, even just generally to check out what we're doing or see pictures of our sanctuary that we're missing at ccunola.org/stewardship, or you can send us a check at the church address on our website. We deeply appreciate your support. It helps us continue to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. Thank you. All right, so our next reading, it will tie in. It's a little controversial. Don't worry, we will talk about it more, but it's called Martyrdom, Worst Idea Ever, from Dr. D.B. Dillard Wright from Psychology Today. Martyrdom narratives focus on the pure innocence of the victim and the joyful, buoyant spirit with which the martyr receives horrific punishment and death. I'm reminded of the accounts of Saint Perpetua and Felicity, who died in the Colosseum in the year 203 CE. Now dawned the day of their victory, and they went forth from the prison into the amphitheater, as it were into heaven, cheerful and bright of countenance. If they trembled at all, it was for joy, not for fear. Perpetua followed behind, glorious of presence, as a true spouse of Christ and darling of God, at whose piercing look all cast down their eyes. Felicity likewise, rejoicing that she had borne a child in safety, that she might fight with the beasts, came now from blood to blood, from midwife to the gladiator, to wash after her travail in a second baptism. Then truly they gave thanks because they had received somewhat of the sufferings of the Lord. This glorification of violence and blood sacrifice does not actually contest the imperial cruelty of Rome. It rather participates in this violence and celebrates it. There is something deeply troubling about needing to prove your belief by suffering and dying, as though the idea were more important than the person. End of reading. What a month. I don't know about you, but amidst all this working to adjust to some sort of new normal, which this will hopefully never be our normal, I haven't really taken a moment to note that it's been just over a month since we gathered for a celebratory Mardi Gras, and just 3 weeks since we had our last worship together in our sanctuary. With coronavirus, isolation, general anxiety, we've been holding a lot in a little bit of time. So today, I'm actually going to talk about that same time span, late February to late March, 55 years ago, where a lot happened for a small group of civil rights organizers. In this, I'll talk a bit about today, too. We'll talk sacrifice, martyrdom, but most importantly, we'll speak of the mundane, namely the essential role that ordinary acts of sacrifice make in extraordinary times. So, in a recent LA Times op-ed, a California resident wrote that 80 years ago, the greatest plague in human history swept across the globe, killing more than 60 million people and decimating the economies of countries across Europe and Asia. It was called World War II. The pathogen that spawned this outbreak was totalitarianism. The thing that stopped it was the sacrifice of millions of women and children doing what they could at home and allies abroad. The writer continues referencing the current coronavirus outbreak. If the biggest sacrifice you're asked to make is to stay home and sit on the couch, then for God's sakes, do it. Now, let's go back. Just over 55 years ago, in 1 month's time, Jimmy Lee Jackson, a civil rights activist and a Baptist deacon, James Reeb, a Unitarian minister, and Viola Liuzzo, a Unitarian Detroit housewife, were killed in Alabama. On February 26, 1965, Jimmy Lee Jackson, unarmed, was shot by an Alabama police officer after leaving a church meeting for voting rights. Jackson's death served as the catalyst for the famous 1965 Selma to Montgomery Civil Rights March. The police officer was finally tried for Jackson's murder in 2007, and in 2010 was given a 6-month sentence. On March 11, 1965, Reverend James Reeb, unarmed, was attacked by 3 men in Selma, Alabama, after heeding Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s call for clergy to join him in nonviolent protest for voting rights. Reverend James Reeb's death served as a catalyst for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. A month after his death, 3 men were charged with Reeb's murder and acquitted that December. On March 25, 1965, Viola Liuzzo, a Detroit housewife who also heeded Dr. King's call to go to Selma, was fatally shot by 4 Ku Klux Klan members as she shuttled marchers between Selma and Montgomery. Viola Liuzzo's death also strengthened the Voting Rights Act's passing. While some of the men in that car served jail time, 1 man in that car was an FBI informant. And so the FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, then spent years besmirching Viola's name in order to avoid its own embarrassment. In August of 1965, the Voting Rights Act, a sweeping piece of legislation that prohibited racial discrimination in voting, was passed. 1 month's time, 55 years ago and today, a lot has happened with those same dates this year, from February 26th to March 25th. Who knows what will come about by August of this year? But while different in time and circumstance, I actually see a common strand of sacrifice in the stories of these remarkable human beings in 1955, sometimes called martyrs, and what we as communities are trying to do in this unprecedented time. But to me, that sacrifice is not martyrdom. So martyr in the Greek is witness. If one looks at it in the Christian sense, it is one who witnesses to their faith by the sacrifice of their lives. As Dr. Dillard Wright noted in our reading today, we most often find early accounts of martyrdom from women in the Roman times. Women who are often gloriously rended apart by lions, sacrificing themselves for the good of their faith. Our excerpt today, in my opinion, was full of kind of creepy, somewhat sexual language of women trembling with joy at their deaths for God. Now, martyrdom has morphed over time to represent a bit more. Someone who dies for their ideals. But can I ask you something? Has anyone truly ever in their lifetime, beyond a Christian telling of ancient martyrs, embraced martyrdom as something to aspire to? Standing up for your ideals, yes. But martyrdom, I think not. Even some of our greatest cultural examples of martyrs, Martin Luther King Jr., for example, about whom, after his own assassination, the Jesuit publication America wrote, "Will the martyr accomplish by his blood what he could not achieve by his words?" did not embrace martyrdom as an ideal. In Dr. King's famous speech, "I've Been to the Mountaintop," the night before his assassination, he presciently noted, "Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will." Martyrdom may have become a foregone conclusion, but it was faced rather than desired by Dr. King. Which brings me to why the myth of martyrdom can be so damaging for organizing work and truly for faith communities working toward a shared progressive goal. Martyrdom demands individualism. Martyrdom demands self-sacrifice. Martyrdom can turn ordinary living people into dead heroes. And a dead hero is harder to aspire to try to live up to, than an ordinary person trying to do something extraordinary, or even halfway decent, in a world, a culture, that marks them as an outlier. Truly, the parts that make me weep and inspire me to continue to live out my ideals, especially when I'm scared or weary, are those very human parts of James and Viola and Jimmy Lee's stories. Jimmy Lee Jackson was the youngest church deacon in his Baptist church. He had a daughter he loved, and the night he was killed, he was peacefully protesting with his sister, mother, grandfather, and other community members. Before going to Selma, Reverend James Reeb moved his family to Roxbury, a predominantly black neighborhood in the Boston area. Reeb, in 1965, was integrating his white children into primarily black schools and was fighting improper fire codes that were leading to folks' death in public housing. And as he wrote to a friend during this time, "We are all amazingly well, and I am spending more time with the family than ever before. We have finally got our ping pong table, and Marie, John, and I play regularly. We are resuming our Friday night birthday festival. We have a cake and candles. Someone tells us about a person we admire, and we sing happy birthday." When Viola Liuzzo, a Detroit housewife and active member of the local NAACP, left her home after witnessing on TV the violence inflicted on black protesters during Bloody Sunday, the first attempt at the Selma to Montgomery Civil Rights March, she told her husband and 5 children, "It's everybody's fight." This next detail bursts my heart and at the same time inspires me. Viola's daughter wrote of that time, "She, my mother, called us every night. I learned how to cursive write and she was so excited. She told me to write my name and put it on her dresser, and she'd see it when she got home." All of these folks knew that there was a risk in what they were doing, and each of them lived an ordinary life too. Family, ping pong, church deacons, cursive writing, and birthday songs. They wanted to live. It is in these little moments they become ordinary human beings rather than dead heroes. They become real. And their spectacular ordinariness might be what hurts us the most in hearing their stories, what scares us the most too, because then that ordinary person doing something extraordinary could possibly be us if we took a risk or two more. I've occasionally felt this fear as a progressive minister, particularly in my public and unwavering support for reproductive health, rights, and justice. I have had times when I've left the house to go to rallies, to meet with folks who've had death threats over their head, to travel out of state, where I look at my family and I recognize that I am making a choice. I am risking my safety a bit, not out of martyrdom, but as a natural movement toward my ideals. And understanding the humanity of folks who have lost their lives while being part of a larger cause also signals to us that we can make more of a difference while alive. Martyrs need not be the only ones who make change. Just this week, along with the amazing Reverend William Barnwell, who was also a civil rights activist, Reverend Joseph E. Lowry, who was a major figure in the civil rights movement, at Reverend Dr. King's side during the Montgomery bus boycott and the Selma March, died at the age of 98. After the tumultuous 1960s, where Reverend Lowry himself was in constant physical danger, the Reverend continued his sacred work. Reverend Lowry led the Southern Christian Leadership Conference for 20 years, from 1977 to 1997, making sure that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was reaffirmed in 1982. Reverend Lowry also supported gay rights and an end to the death penalty. He was known to have an impish sense of humor and a tenacious spirit. He was able to not only carry on the work of so many of his fallen comrades, but to move it forward in new directions for new times. Because that too is a false myth of martyrdom, that once someone becomes a martyr, their story and the story of the cause they were fighting for comes to some neat, conclusive end. But in truth, the survivors must continue the work, because not one person alone is ever responsible for it all. Even Jesus, who to some is the greatest martyr, had others carry on his message and word. And while many of us Unitarian Universalists no longer identify as Christians, we often fall prey to this martyrdom with our own UU folks. That some individuals, like James Reeb or Viola Liuzzo, did something beyond human ability in an unprecedented time and paid for it with their lives. But I say that all times, in one issue or another, is an unprecedented time, and that each of us together can do something extraordinary. Or you know what? Even something beyond ordinary, in small and concrete ways throughout our lives to make positive change. But let's be honest, today, this last month and onwards, is and will be some unprecedented times. Our sacrifice amidst this coronavirus may be to fully recognize, in a way that we might not have had to before, just how interconnected we are. That my choices have a profound effect on your life and vice versa. In this interconnection, the most loving sacrifice we can make is to stay physically apart from each other. And that is hard. I miss y'all, our church and its people. I miss physically seeing many of my friends and loved ones. I miss letting my son be his full New Orleans self, hugging just about everyone he sees. This physical distancing seems anathema to the New Orleans culture of physically close community. This physical distancing, this commitment to physical distancing also challenges something else, and this may be a good thing. Some of our American individualism, where I put my individual freedom, my getting to do what I want would make me feel good, and needs before the whole. And I want to recognize too that some are sacrificing more than others in this time. Their livelihoods, their businesses, their mental health. But I want to speak to those of us today who might just have a little extra space in our hearts and in our head amidst this constant anxiety and scrolling newsfeed of coronavirus. Because there are small, concrete things we can do, even from our couches or porches or beds or little library areas. So we at Community Church UU have been working to help connect you all to some of these ways to help each week. in our Community Church UU newsletter. Sign up below in our Facebook feed. I don't know if that works. If and only if you have the spiritual capacity, I'm thinking that we might begin our weekly UU prayer, which is a small action we do beyond ourselves. After all, we preach deeds before creeds as a faith. Let us try to do one thing for someone else virtually each week, and let us know about it on this page or beyond. As seen in our newsletter, several CCUU members are calling other members each week just to check in, to say hello, to stay connected. Some of you are sewers, and I know you're out there, especially in New Orleans, and you can help make masks for health professionals. Some of you who have a sturdier spirit can call our federal and state elected officials, keep calling, keep writing, keep signing, to demand more supplies for healthcare workers on the front lines. Others can donate to Second Harvest, whose stores are running low for food insecure folks. Many of us will get through this. There will be a time when the hardest part of this is over, which will not happen by Easter, despite what one particular leader says. But in that future time, those who have come through this will need to carry on our sacred work. We will need to reimagine a new way of being for us as Americans and Unitarian Universalists, where we take better care of our sick and at-risk folks, no matter their illness, where we make change around our leadership and policies, questioning what being truly great means, where we sacrifice the me for the we, in climate justice, in economic justice, and in so much more. On Christmas Eve at Community Church UU, a gathering I am remembering even more fondly today, I used the quote I read earlier from Victor Laval's brilliant novel, Big Machine, where Laval's narrator writes of being inspired by Joseph and Mary rather than the divine Jesus, because for all this talk of Joseph and Mary being holy and righteous, they were just human beings. They didn't know if they were right. They could only hope. I can try to aspire to that. I use this quote often because it reminds me of our faithful works and calling as Unitarian Universalists, as human beings trying to be more compassionate, loving, and caring in our own words and deeds, more caring than our culture, our world often tells us to be, and to get up each day, even when we fail, and to try again to make small incremental change, to see our UU prayer in action. So let us not aspire to be martyrs, but instead to just be folks, trying in unprecedented times to do the right thing, to care about each other, to truly be a community beyond the four walls of a church, beyond the confines of a city, beyond time itself. Then and only then will we be honoring the memories of those extraordinary, ordinary freedom fighters like Viola, Liuzzo, James Reeb, and Jimmy Lee Jackson. Let us honor them by being us, compassionate, caring, anxious, loving, thoughtful, complicated folks, trying, sometimes failing, and trying again to do sacred, compassionate work throughout our lives. May that be our legacy. May that be our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Our benediction today is from the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in our lifetimes. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. And this week, let us go forth inside our homes with hope, with faith, and with love. It was so wonderful to see your names from old and new and in New Orleans and across the country today. I'm so glad that we can be together. Have a beautiful week, and please know that we are always here at Community Church Unitarian Universalist.
Good morning, everybody. I am so sorry I'm late. I was having a little problems getting on. It was doing something weird. But anyways, I'm here. Good morning. That was just a lovely service, very timely. I really enjoyed it. And I hope everybody enjoyed it also. It was great seeing everybody coming in and listening and responding to everything. So today's reading, we're still finishing up with resilience. And the reading I'm going to be doing today is called Resilience is Like a Rubber Band. The concept of the concept of resilience is complex, yet simple. It is simple as a metaphor of a rubber band. Rubber bands, like people, come in different sizes and are subject to different challenges, right? They also have different thicknesses, you can see here, and the ability to stretch shorter or longer. So, as you can see, rubber bands, they can be pushed to their extent, but if you notice, they can snap back, whether it's long or short. The modern rubber band stretches and snaps back with resilience. The modern rubber band goes through a process called vulcanization. Vulcanization is a chemical process in which the rubber is heated with sulfur. The process involves the formation of crosslinks between long rubber molecules. This gives the rubber durability and increased flexibility to snap back, just like I am showing you here. We human beings have our own crosslinks, just like the vulcanized rubber bands. Studies at Yale show that a community support is a crucial part of resilience. Social support during stressful periods in one's life makes a huge difference in one's ability to cope, survive, and thrive. We have our family, our friends, our community, and of course, this church. We are meant to ask for help. We will not be discarded like a useless rubber band. We can bounce back stronger after our personal walks through fire with the help of our crosslinks. So, to help you remember to use your crosslinks daily and to stay resistant is think about the rubber band, right? So if you can find a rubber band around your house, then you can always remember that. Even though we're stretched to the most, even if you are larger, even if you are smaller, right? You still have that tendency to be stretched, to be, whatever that is. You always have the ability to pop back, right? To snap back. So what we learned today about rubber bands is amazing, is that rubber bands represent resilience. We also show flexibility, bounceability, and spring. Now, these are the components of resilience. Okay, so that is the reading for today. So, of course, I have rubber bands on my mind. So I thought, well, what can we make with rubber bands? And so, of course, there was vulcanization in the thing. So, I had to go there. So what we're going to do today is, now, I know you're going to have a tendency to want to, kids, I know how you are. You're going to want to shoot them, right? So just be careful. I don't want you to do that. If you can't do your rubber bands respectfully, then we need to give them to someone else. So instead of being destructive, we're going to do something creative. So we live in New Orleans. Let's make music together. And you see all over the world, in Italy, they're singing and making themselves, even the police officers are trying to make people happier in the spaces that they're in, and they're using music, which is beautiful. So today, we're going to make a Vulcan guitar and also a Vulcan harmonica with rubber bands, unbelievably. So the first one, of course, is the Vulcan guitar. I thought, Spock always had that groovy little harp thing he used to do. So you can get any box, okay? In this case, we got a lot of tissues around, right? So, and it has a hole. Think about a guitar and the opening. And plus, it has to be enclosed. You can do a cereal box, whatever you want to do. And so I got different rubber bands, as you can see here. And I use, of course, I have very interesting push pins. These are little rubber duck push pins, but you can get either pins, needles, or push pins of every side, or even nails that you can put in there. Just something to hold the rubber bands. And then you stretch them above, right? This one's kind of cool because it has little things on the bottom so I can hold it like it's something. But you can see, I hope you can hear it, right? You can play with it and do whatever. Of course, I was going, Spirit of Life, right? Anyways, you can do whatever you want to do with it. But it sounds kind of fun. See how many? This is what? A 6-string guitar? Woohoo! And then you can do various things. If you want to decorate this thing, you can. But it's kind of fun. Kind of drive your parents crazy. But then again, you can have a thing with, just playing around. So the second one is kind of cool. And this is a harmonica. So what we're going to do is you have 2 popsicle sticks, right? And then you're going to use a piece of paper. This is just, whatever you have around the house. I use like, what was it? What is it? Envelope. So it's a little stronger. You could probably use copy paper, but a thinner paper, okay? It's got to be thinner so when you're making the sound, it wobbles, so it makes that sound. So this is a little heavier than, say, maybe copy paper. And then I wanted to see the different kinds of noises. So then I used like the paper bag, right? I wanted to see what that sounded like. So what you do is you take your popsicle stick and you trace it, and then you cut it out because you're going to sandwich it between the 2 things here, okay? So basically you're taking the paper and then you're sandwiching them in, okay? Hold on one second. Okay, so here you go. You're sandwiching them. Make sure you line it up really good, okay? I have it here already. So what you're going to do is take the rubber bands, right? And then you're just going to secure each end with the rubber band, okay? So you do that on both ends, okay? I'm just showing you here. Okay. All right? So now, what you need now are toothpicks, okay? So the toothpicks, you could probably use like bamboo skewers or even straws or something, because what you're trying to do is make a little space, like opening up that space. So on these, I just clip off the pointy ends, okay? And then you do it, you cut it to the length, the width, you cut it to the width of that, and then you snip it, okay? Some of these you can do it. Anyway, snip it. Okay, so here I have one finished. Oops, sorry. And you can see let's see, let me see if I can do it here. Right here, you see, you wedge it. I don't know if you can see through it, okay? So that's what you want, okay? So this is the one, okay, hold on. I have 2 of them. This is the one with the plastic bag you get from the store. So this one's kind of fun. This one you can breathe in and out like as if it was a harmonica, and it sounds a little funny. So let's see if this works. Now, don't put your mouth like that because then you get it all wet. Kind of do this, okay? And then put it in your mouth. Makes fabulous sounds, and you can run around the house doing that. It'll be fabulous. So that is with the plastic bag, okay? So this one is with the paper, and this one you can only breathe forward. You can't bring it out, but you can always, keep pushing and pushing. Okay, you ready? Fabulous. You can run around. Actually, you can play your guitar thing and going around. So here are 2 things you can do with just things you got around the house. You can even think of doing the Vulcan guitar as this Spock had. He had a very fancy one. Or you can get like I've seen people do guitar things out of the guitars out of the cereal boxes and stuff, and just put a handle on it. So you can do that. So it's very simple. Rubber bands. I have a bunch of these at the church. So but if they're smaller, I guess they're okay. But I think the thicker ones are probably better. So in that case, I'll send you off in a, so have a good week. And this is Cynthia Ramirez, your Religious Education Director for Community Truth Unitarian Universalist. And I'll be sending out, so this is the end of the month, so I'm going to send out some more lessons for you so you can keep your UU tradition going and make sure you're lighting those chalices every day and what your joys and sorrows every day like we always do. And so, like I said, just be creative. This is what gets you through. And be good to your parents and just run around, do what you need to do, and make sure you're studying because that's what you need. And I will see you next week. And be resilient. And we will talk next week about another idea. Okay? Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I'm going to be driving my cats crazy with these things. They've been running around the house already. All right. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.